Supreme Court, Supreme Court, Court, Supreme Court,
Supreme Court, Supreme Court, Supreme Court, change rules, court rules, court rules, court rules, change the rules, change the rules, rules, change the rules, change the rules, court, Supreme Court, Supreme Court, change rules, Supreme Court, Supreme Court, Supreme Court, Supreme Court, change the rules, change the rules, court, Supreme Court, Supreme Court, Supreme Court rules, Supreme Court rules, change rules,
Supreme Court, Supreme Court, Supreme Court, Court, Supreme 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 Court, change rules, Supreme Court, Supreme Court, Supreme Court, Supreme Court, change rules, change
Supreme Court, change rules,
Court, Supreme Court, Supreme Court,
Supreme Court, Supreme Court rules, change rules,
Supreme Court, rules, Supreme Court, Supreme Court, Supreme Court, Supreme Court, Supreme Court
rules, Supreme Court, change, court, Supreme Court, Supreme Court,
Supreme Court, Supreme Court,